Well, let's extend that question to Kamran Matin. He's a lecturer on international relations at the University of Essex in the UK. Mr. Matin, welcome to the day. So, can Iran's rulers manage the protests without fueling them?
Hi, I'm actually at the University of Sussex, just to correct that. I mean, the Iranian regime is facing a really difficult task because the nature of the protests is different and their capacities seem to have been exhausted. The protests are different because, it's led and instigated by women, which is a bit difficult for the regime to sell to its base, its social base, which is increasingly narrowing, that these are, foreign plots and these are connected to the outside world. The protesters are unarmed, and the protests are also extremely dispersed geographically in many places simultaneously. The protesters have kind of designed or kind of come up with their own innovative modes of protest, usually small scale in different neighborhoods at the same time, which means that security forces have to be kind of strained and dispersed in different places at the same time. And most importantly, the protests have gone on for 7 weeks. And this means that the officers on the ground are exhausted. The human resources of the security forces seems to have reached its limits. So at this rate, if it continues, it's not entirely clear that what the regime is able to do. And there are signs of a bit of confusion within the state. They try to scare people off the streets by unleashing excessive violence in the periphery of Iran, in the ethnic minority regions such as Baluchistan, where in one single day in the city of Zahedan, up to 90 people were massacred. But even this hasn't deterred the protesters. And therefore, it doesn't seem that the regime has many new ideas to bring to the protest, and they seem to be continuing as they did today. And
so how vulnerable?
It seems that even people.
Sorry to jump in there, but how
Yes.
vulnerable is the regime after these 7 weeks?
I think the vulnerability seems to kind of increase by the day. And we saw today in Karaj near Tehran, people actually defended themselves against the violence of the security forces. And according to the state media, one Basij kind of militia related to IRGC was killed. And there were videos of security forces, cars being set alight and so on. So people are increasingly actually defending themselves, not simply resisting. And this also adds to the pressure on the security forces. So the vulnerability seems to go go up, increase by day.
Do you think we'll see the violence spiral out of control?
Well, at this rate, if the regime continues the kind of violence it has unleashed up to now, and if it increases it, and if people continue to defending themselves with kind of makeshift weapons or simply defending themselves with whatever they have, there is a possibility that there will be more casualties. But I think the regime is also aware that excessive violence in the major urban centers such as Tehran or other big cities can actually make things worse and kind of increase the scale of the problem they are facing. So much depends on what sort of measures the regime is taking in the coming days and weeks. But one thing is clear, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is not used to compromise with internal opposition, and that's it's the kind of Achilles heel, so to speak.
Yeah, Western governments are unified in their condemnation of Iran and the response to the protests. But what leverage do outside actors have on what Iran does to its people, and does Iran care?
Well, I think actually the symbolism of Iranian state's isolation in international bodies and institutions is quite important, which is why we recently saw that the Iranian foreign ministry wrote to European countries, warning them against taking measures against its kind of diplomatic centers, or the idea that EU might put revolutionary guards on its list of kind of sanctioned entities has quite reverberated within Iran. Expelling Iran from UN bodies such as the one overseeing the human rights or women's rights. These are actually measures which are important in the sense that it gives support and solidarity with the Iranian people, and they would feel that they are not alone in the struggle for basic human rights and the kind of change of regime into a more democratic one. So there are certain level of leverage which our outside world has against the Islamic Republic.
Now, not too long ago, the talks on renewing the Iranian nuclear deal looked like they were making some progress. Is all that on hold now because of the protests?
I think the prospects actually are extremely slim now for multiple reasons. The midterm elections in the United States is very close, and the signs indicate that actually Republicans might take control of the House, and that would make actually a deal by the Biden administration with Iran, especially under the circumstances we have now, given the internal protest, which increasingly, by the way, protesters themselves call it a revolution. There is this slogan, it's no longer a protest, it's a revolution. So it will be very costly politically for Biden to come and compromise with the Iranian regime. On the other hand, I don't think a deal actually would change much inside Iran in terms of economic benefits of it would actually likely to re-inflame the protest rather than stop it. On the other hand, we have a change of government in Israel, which might actually affect the whole process even more.
Exactly. Kamran Matin of the University of Sussex, not Essex. Excuse us.